What if achieving everything you've ever wanted in your life all came down to shifting your mindset? This is what we believe at the Mindset Flex podcast. Buckle up and get ready to expand your mind and get uncomfortable. And welcome to this very, very special episode with our first guest speaker, Anthony Tabanji, who also goes by Anthony Maverick. I actually just met Anthony this week here locally in Breckenridge, Colorado. And the wild thing is that we are both from Cleveland, Ohio, and we basically went to high schools down the street from each other. So Anthony, you became friends with my husband, Erhard, because you guys both work for the same company, the same brokerage here. Can you tell me again what you do for them?
So I help manage operations for the brokerage, and I also run the property management company that's teamed up with all the agents.
So cool. And I just kept hearing Erhard talk about you because you're literally from basically the same town that I'm from. Mm-hmm. So we grew up next to each other.
Small world.
How wild. But Anthony is a very successful person, and I wanted him to share a little bit about who he is and why we should listen and take his advice. So do you mind giving us a little bit about your backstory and how you got to where you are?
Thanks, Elise. Yeah. So I've got a kind of an interesting background, a very varied one. Growing up, I always kind of viewed myself as a jack of all trades, which was really good in high school because I did really well throughout all my different classes. And then getting into college, same thing. Wasn't really sure what angle I wanted to take in bringing value to the world. But I remember senior year of high school, I was taking a physics class, and everything just really made so much sense for me with describing the physical world using math. And so my brain was just hyper-stimulated in those environments. And so I started leaning into the direction of engineering, right? That was what would make sense, helping solve real-world problems using math and logic. It just really clicked well with my brain. So going into college, I ended up focusing on engineering, aerospace, and mechanical, and very quickly learned that although my brain was very well suited for the technical pieces of that type of problem solving, my attention span and the way that I wanted to solve the problems, it was a little bit too micro, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. Focusing on the small little details, I would lose track of why I was doing that because I was just very fascinated with big picture, how the entire thing fits together, and how it actually solves a problem in the world. Whereas a lot of engineering, especially, the curriculum, was here's a tiny little problem, fluid dynamics, for example, tiny little problem. Let's solve figure out the velocity of the fluid flowing through this, through this area or something like that. So started realizing, okay, I think learning engineering and being exposed to the way of thinking as an engineer is very useful, but I don't think I want to be a quote unquote engineer, right? So very quickly, sophomore year of college, I started coming to that realization and really fell very quickly into entrepreneurship. I was just fascinated with taking my reality completely into my own hands. As with your family, Elise, my family is not from this country. I was the first one born in the United States. And so I was just, in my blood, it was just self-empowerment. Like, how do I just create my own reality, completely accountable, hold myself completely accountable to that and not rely on anybody else, And so entrepreneurship was that answer. I think that's the best form of empowerment, self-empowerment and empowering others through entrepreneurship. So long story short, started random businesses. I started doing web consulting, building websites for small businesses in the area. I actually started a residential painting company in college, just super random, people might think, but I was so focused on generating the skill sets to lead a team, to sell, residential painting. I went to probably about 1,000 doors in a matter of 3 months, door to door, just knocked, and door to door sales is a fantastic way to learn how to sell, right?
So the interesting part to me about this is that you were going to college and you were getting an engineering degree, where most people getting an engineering degree would be like, this is a dope job. I'm going to do great. So what in the world awakened that desire in you, right? Like, you have this different mindset, sure, but what awakened in you to want to be an entrepreneur and start doing something else on the side while you're literally getting an engineering degree? Like, what was it for you that was like, this isn't good enough for me. Like, I need more.
I remember one of my internships before I made this realization was for an engineering company. And I would just fall asleep. I would be working on a problem. They'd say, hey, it was a structures engineering position. And I would just fall asleep. And so I ended up every day going and spending time with the sales and business development team in the company. And I just started realizing, wow, these guys don't really connect well with the engineers, and the engineers don't really connect well with these guys. So I ended up, my position just kind of manifested as being the bridge between the technical department in the company and the sales and business development department and product development, because there was just such a disconnect. So that's where things started clicking, is honestly just out of pure necessity in that company. They were arguing about things. They were like, we need this done in 2 weeks. And the engineers were like, this is going to take a year. So that's where I started realizing that there was opportunities that I enjoyed way more than just focusing on small little micro tasks. So that's where it started. And then I just took the first leap into my first business and realized, okay, this way of thinking of what the engineering degree is teaching me is very useful. It's very structured and compartmentalized and targeted, and it uses math and logic, and it's incredibly useful. But I want to use it to solve problems right in front of me in the real world. And to me, the lowest hanging fruit was entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
Just find a problem, solve it, right?
Yeah.
And don't expect anyone else to solve it. Just do it yourself.
Yeah. So there's so many people that they go to college, they're getting a degree, or they think that that's what they want. And then throughout, they kind of realize maybe this isn't what I wanted, or it's not looking like what I want it to look like. So what would you say to those people? Like, what was your motivation that got you to actually like take massive amount of actions? Because I'm sure that's what you did, massive amount of action, where most people, they just kind of sit back and they say, well, I don't know how to figure this out. I don't know what my passion is. I don't know what I want. And so instead of taking action, they sit back because they don't know what they want.
Yeah. My strong opinion is that you're not going to find out what you want unless you go do it.
Yes.
Right?
This is what I always say. Yeah.
Imperfect action is how I have everything that I have in my life right now. It was just through the manifestation of imperfect action, because I would not have known that I didn't want to do this or do that if I hadn't just gone out there and started doing.
Yes.
And my perspective on college in general, I think, is a little bit different than a lot of people. The realization about the difference between micro and macro as far as my engineering degree, that's when I started realizing that a college degree is meant to be a tool to help you accomplish what you want to accomplish in the future after you graduate. It's not, you know, obviously there's trade schools and you can go to med school, but like overall, the general bachelor's degree, it's not a trade school. You're not going and getting the degree and then you have to get a job in that exact degree, and the job title has to have that degree in the name. That's not what it is, right? And a lot of people, I feel like, sit back through college and think that is the case, because a lot of times schools might directly or indirectly communicate that get the degree and then get the job. And there's like this connection. They think as long as you get the degree, you're going to have the job that you studied for. For me, it was like, okay, I just want to aggregate as many skill sets and experiences and tools as possible for me to accomplish what I want to accomplish in the future. And yeah, I have an engineering degree. That doesn't mean my job title has to say mechanical engineer or aerospace engineer, right? And so that perspective helped me a lot in saying, okay, I'm okay that I didn't do fantastic in applied thermodynamics, because I just wanted to learn this out of that and use that as a tool in my future. So that was my perspective throughout the whole time I was in college, was let me just try to get the most amount of useful knowledge possible that I can apply in the future.
Yeah.
You know?
So I know you don't like talking numbers, but can you tell us what you've accomplished? Like where you are now, who you are? I mean, feel free to brag about yourself.
Yeah. So I generally like to stay behind the scenes. I'm a relatively private person, but sure, I'm happy to share. So out of college, actually before I graduated, I got very involved in the startup world. So I ended up helping launch and grow a couple different startup companies. One was a local food delivery company in Los Angeles. And then the largest one, I helped open and launch the Los Angeles market for a peer-to-peer car sharing platform.
How did you find them? How did that even come your way?
So another thing that was extremely intentional throughout my college experience was networking. I went to University of Southern California, USC, incredible alumni network. And so my focus there was create relevant relationships that I'm going to be able to give value to them. They're going to be able to give value to me, right? So those actually came through that network. And so I was always putting myself out there. Everyone I met, I was saying, hey, this is who I am. I'd love to keep in touch, and just growing my network very intentionally without necessarily saying, I want to get something out of this person, but just, I want to make the connection genuinely. And so these opportunities came from that. And so that second startup is really where I fell into stride, I think, in realizing that growing businesses and being so focused on problem solving through entrepreneurship was my thing. Like that's where it all, I had inklings of it. Like, as I mentioned, I was thinking about it, but that's where it all clicked.
Yeah.
I really hit my stride in helping grow that company in the Los Angeles market. And I realized that was my stride even more so when it no longer became a startup. I remember the day it happened. I had a code red issue with a client, with a customer the company was interfacing with. I was in the field and the problem had to be solved. And so what I did is I directly sent an email thread directly to the CTO of the company up in Silicon Valley. I CC'd a couple people. I was like, hey, this is code red. We need to get this handled. This needs to be, like, we have a problem. Let's solve it, right? The guy responds very favorably. Oh, this is amazing. Thanks for bringing this to our attention. Great job. Awesome. Cool. I didn't want the recognition. All I wanted to do was solve the problem, right? The next day, I got sat down by my direct supervisor. He's like, hey, man, I totally get what your intention was. You're just trying to solve problems. Like, we've been here since the beginning together. We're building this startup. But the way that you approached it, you actually stepped on this guy's toes and this guy's toes because you didn't CC this guy first. You didn't go to this manager first. And that's where I sat there and I literally told my supervisor, I was like, I don't think this is a startup anymore. And so that was my point at which I said, you know what? I think it's time for me to just jump headfirst into my next thing on my own. And so that was a huge catalyst for me to realize where my sweet spot was, right?
Yeah.
I don't do well with office politics. I don't do well with things that don't directly serve the problem that's trying to be solved. I tried every amount of effort, every ounce of effort that I put forward. I want it to be a productive amount of effort, right? And so office politics takes away from that. Go to this guy before this guy takes away from that. All I'm trying to do is solve the problem, right? So to segue into my next entrepreneurial step, I visited Breckenridge. I had some family that lived in Denver. They brought me up to Breck and just absolutely fell in love with the town.
It is the best town.
It's a very magical place.
Yes.
There's no place like it. And it had this very interesting allure to me as an entrepreneur because I thought, you know what? This could be like my little kingdom, This could just be, I could focus on building a small business and just really focus in on a very specific locale. And it seemed manageable because it's a smaller town with tons of people that visit. So I was like, cool, this is a good balance. And so I ended up starting a small restaurant in Breckenridge, right on Main Street. Small footprint, tech-enabled, tech-driven. I did online ordering. We were doing some really cool stuff that no one else was doing because a lot of the people that were here owning restaurants have been here for decades. And I wanted to bring something a little bit different and give people, something they enjoy.
How were you able to do that though? Like, did you save up your money from your startup? Did you already know, okay, I want to invest in a restaurant? Like, how did you actually get to that step?
It's a long story and I'll keep it short.
Okay.
But I just realized, so I was on Main Street. There's a little kiosk that sells crepes.
Yes.
And so
best crepe place.
Amazing place. I know the owner. They're amazing people and they've been here for decades and they've been absolutely killing it. And so I went there, waited in line for 2.5 hours, 15 degrees out, and I was blown away. I was like, this is so interesting. This is a business that is making tons of money, making tons of impact in the local community. And it doesn't have to be the next Facebook for it to be a business, right? And so being so engrossed in the startup world, it helped me have a little bit of a paradigm shift where I was like, I don't have to start the next Facebook to be a big entrepreneur.
Makes sense.
To be a successful entrepreneur, I just create something that creates value. That's it. It's that simple. Self-empowerment, full accountability for my reality, and create value in the world. That's entrepreneurship to me, right? And so that was the spark. And within 30 days, I got all of the funding together to purchase the only outstanding other license for a kiosk like that on Main Street. I scraped together my savings. I got a loan. I had a credit union give me a bridge loan. Literally within 30 days, and I was pretty young at that point. I was in my early 20s.
Wow.
And I remember the brokers of the bit that were selling the business. They were just like, man, we've never seen anything like this. We have no idea how you got all that money together. You closed on the date you said you were going to. And so that was the jump. I quit my startup job. I sold my motorcycles, sold my cars. I was living in Santa Monica at the time, on the ocean, having what most would think a very comfortable life, but it just wasn't enough for me, I wanted to be stimulated and create value in the world. So jumped head first and started that, ended up scaling that business. Unfortunately broke my back, which put me in kind of a pivot point. Silver lining, I met my girlfriend through that experience. I ended up realizing how to scale myself as an entrepreneur through different types of businesses, consulting and real estate. So that was another huge turning point in my career, but that's definitely where it all started. Fast forward to today and we've scaled a pretty large long-term real estate portfolio. Our short-term rental management company in Summit County we've grown by about 4x in the past 2 years.
Insane.
And then now with the Day Palazzolo group scaling significantly, we're breaking into Vail and Aspen. So yeah, just very excited about where this journey has brought me.
That's crazy.
And yeah, it's been quite the adventure.
How old are you?
I'm 28.
28.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's relatively a very young age for accomplishing all that you've accomplished. Like, that's really, really, really insane. So, what is your number one advice to, let's say, people in their late teens or early 20s that are really desiring to have a next level life and maybe have a comfortable life or have a house in San Diego? What is your best advice to them? And what is like the number one, I guess, mindset that carried you through and got you to here?
So ever since I was really young, I was fascinated by the arbitrary nature of our reality. I know that sounds kind of convoluted, but what I mean by that is not that everything is arbitrary, but that the way that we see things is totally arbitrary. It's up to us, right? And so I remember sitting at a campfire. I was like 10 years old, and I saw a bat fly by, and a couple kids next to me were like, "Oh, that's ew, it's gross, it's a bat." And I just had this weird thing in my brain. Again, I was a kid, I was 10 years old, but I was like, hey, I want to decide that every single time I see a bat for the rest of my life, it's good luck. And to this day, every single time I see a bat, it's good luck. It's stayed with me ever since then because I realized how arbitrary our perspectives on reality are, and that's completely up to us to define them. And so that mentality has stuck with me, and I continue to do that where I'm like, hey, I want to decide that this is going to be my reality, and I just manifest it.
Yeah.
There's no woo-saw, there's no magic. It's literally setting the intention out there of what you want and then figuring out the simplest steps to get there and then just executing. It's really that simple. Obviously way easier said than done. But if we distill it down to that decision-making process of first, what do you want? If you're in your late teens, just start experiencing things, trying things, and figure out, what do you want your future to look like? A lot of people might get anxiety from that because they think that if they decide and make those decisions, they have to stick with that for the rest of their life. That's not the case. What I mean is, what do you want now? What do you want your reality to look like in the short term, in the midterm, and in the long term, right? At least have an idea of the midterm and the long term. But just with conviction, with hyper conviction, decide what at this point, with the information that you have, the experiences that you have, the things that inspire you now, what do you want? Most people don't even ask themselves that question, Elise, right? A lot of people are just...
I don't know.
No, they're just like going through life. Their parents are telling them where to go to school, what to study, what to do. Just figure out what you want, right? And that's one of the most fundamental pieces.
I mean, even for you, the most powerful thing was that you didn't really realize what you enjoyed or what you wanted until you kept putting yourself in those situations. Like, your goal was not to start a startup. Your goal was to go to college and get an engineering degree. But you kept opening yourself up to people around you and opportunities and just saying yes to everything. And that's how you kind of figured out what you enjoyed doing. And it's like constantly putting yourself out there. So let's say somebody figures out what they want.
Yeah.
Why do you think most people don't succeed and don't achieve it?
Have you heard of the compound effect?
Have I?
Of course you have.
As a bodybuilder, yes.
Of course. And this concept, I think a lot of people overlook because it's so simple, right? Once you decide what you want, and then you understand in a general sense what it's going to take to get there, just do it consistently every single day. A lot of people will do it for 2 weeks and then they'll just stop because they thought, okay, I didn't get a measurable amount of results for me to just continue this process, right? And you totally understand with bodybuilding. This is a process to get to those goals you're setting, right? And if you're doing your goal setting and figuring out what you want properly, they should seem scary to you. The things that you tell yourself you want should almost freak you out.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Because that is the case, this is going to be a process, right? So after you figure out what you want, just figure out what those small little actions on a daily basis, on an hourly basis, you have to take every single week in order to get yourself in the direction of those things that you want in the short term, in the midterm, and the long term. There's no secrets to success, right? It's just a matter of understanding your intentions and then executing, right? I have a journaling practice I actually shared with Erhard because it's inspired the heck out of me. And I won't take credit for creating it, but I aggregated a bunch of things I had seen other people doing. Every single morning I do this to ensure and course correct constantly that I'm moving in the right direction.
Yeah.
I start with my gratitudes, right? What am I grateful for in this moment? If a bird flies overhead, I'll just write, I'm so grateful for that bird because it reminded me how beautiful nature, just random stuff. But what it does is it conditions my brain every single morning to be hyper grateful for everything.
To look for the good.
Yes. The second piece is my intentions for the day. I'm not talking about goal setting. I'm not talking about a to-do list. I'm talking about my intentions. Do breath work at least twice to be hyper present. Make sure I treat my family with extra respect because I know I'm stressed out this week because of something going on at work. Just set the intentions for that day. What do I want to make sure that I go to bed with? And I'm like, wow, I'm so glad that I set that intention, right? Number 3, one of the most powerful is what is called quantum thoughts. This is a concept that I initially learned from a guy named Charlie Rocket. I don't know if you've seen some of his content. Check him out.
Okay.
So the quantum thoughts exercise, extremely powerful. We already know, a lot of people know about this practice, but a lot of people don't realize how incredibly powerful it is when you do it consistently. What you do in the quantum thought, what I do in the quantum thought section, is different for everyone. But what I do is I write things in there as if they've already happened.
Yeah.
Okay. I use the language in the present tense. I use the language in the past tense. I just accomplished this. It feels amazing. I put emotions in there sometimes. My entire journaling practice is just based on how I feel that day. It's generally bullet points. So if I want to get more elaborate in that quantum thought section, I'll write a full sentence. If I don't, and I just want to put a quick bullet point of something that I just accomplished as it's already happened, I'll just put a quick bullet point. But that quantum thoughts section is so powerful, it's almost scary. I've been doing it for about 3 years now, every single morning. And if you look at what those sections mimic, it's almost as if it's the past, the present, and the future, right? Your gratitudes is, what have I accomplished already? What is in my life right now that I'm grateful for? It's kind of the past, right? The intentions for the day, that's the present, right? In this day, what I want to set, right? And the quantum thoughts is the future. So it's conditioning your brain on a daily basis to understand, respect, and plan for the short term, the midterm, and the long term, the past, the present, the future. Just making sure that your brain is conditioned so that you don't lose sight every single day what you're working towards in 10 years, but you also don't lose sight and that you're so focused on the future that you're not grateful for what you have now, right? I love the saying of being content but not satisfied. And so this journaling practice has conditioned my brain so intensely to always be so focused on being present while not forgetting where I'm trying to be, right?
Yeah.
And so that quantum thoughts section, it showed me how powerful it was when I started it, like I said, about 3 years ago. I was writing there, crazy things, right? Things that I never even thought would like, I just did this. I was just in this. In that January, at the end of that month, that first month of me doing it, I wrote, I'm in Forbes. Forbes just interviewed me about my businesses. It feels amazing. I feel so grateful for it. 6 months later, I got a call from the Forbes PR team.
Stop.
And they wrote a feature on me as an entrepreneur.
That's insane.
I didn't realize that that was in my quantum thoughts section until 6 months after that, when I thought about, after a year of going through this journaling practice, why don't I go back and read what I put in there, right?
Dang.
I went back, and to be honest, I got extremely emotional, and I'm kind of feeling right now that it was such a powerful intention that I'd set that somehow through my conversations, my networking, my energy as an entrepreneur, it got to Forbes. And there's a feature now in me on Forbes.com about me as an entrepreneur because I set that intention. I didn't remember when they called me, oh, I wrote this in my journal 6 months ago. No, but I manifested it because I literally told the universe, I put the energy out there, and subconsciously through my conversations and my networking and all that, it happened. And so that's when I kind of took a big step back, and it was kind of like, ooh, all right, this is something I have to really respect, this practice, because this is how I'm going to manifest everything I want in my life and for the people around me.
Wow.
So
tell me about that. You've said manifestation quite a couple times, and I'm a big believer in it, but I find that people have a hard time grasping it or understanding it. And they think, oh, I'm going to manifest this and I'm just going to think about it and it's just going to drop in my lap. So what is your definition of manifestation in your life?
Figuring out what I want and deciding it with conviction. That is my definition of manifestation, because that's all it takes for you to exude that energy towards that goal. And that's why the quantum thoughts exercise for me is so powerful, because it forces me to do that on a daily basis.
Yeah.
I'm constantly deciding. And even if it changes, sometimes it's materialistic. Okay. And I'm fine with that and I accept it.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's altruistic. I want my family to be in this ultimate state of bliss, whatever it is, right? I just write it and I don't judge myself on it. If one day I say, I just bought a Lamborghini Gallardo and it feels amazing, I don't judge myself on anything I put in that journal.
Yeah.
And I'm okay if it changes the next week, because all I'm trying to do is sow into my being what I want to manifest in my reality in the short, mid, and long term. So the key to that manifestation piece is just deciding what it is, right? In that moment. And again, if it changes, that's fine. But deciding it with conviction, people underestimate the power that we have around our reality and people around us. People think they have less control than they actually do.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Which is staggering to me because we can literally, again, back to the arbitrary nature of our realities, we can literally do whatever we want.
We can.
Right? Sounds cliche, but it's cliche for a reason.
Yeah.
Because we literally can.
Yeah.
So deciding with conviction what it is you want to manifest, to me, is the most important part about manifestation. Because once you set that intention, you'll figure it out.
Yeah.
You'll figure out what people to talk to. You'll figure out, how to exude that proper energy so that that magazine calls you and picks it. You'll figure out what needs to be done if you decide that you want it to be done.
Yeah.
Right? So deciding with conviction, to me, is the number one piece of manifestation.
Yeah, absolutely. So with all these things that you write down and manifest and think about, what's your input on doubt?
That's an interesting one, right? Doubt about manifesting reality or self-doubt that you can create it?
Just any doubt. Just if you hear the word doubt, is that even part of your life?
To be honest, I kind of wrote it out a long time ago.
Yeah.
And I kind of wrote it out a long time ago because of how much imperfect action I conditioned myself to take. Because if I had doubt that I could do something, I wouldn't give myself enough time to even think about that doubt. I would just start doing.
Yeah.
And by the time I remembered that I was doubting, I had already done something that convinced me, oh, I could do this, right?
Yeah.
So imperfect action has continued to be the most important piece for me to really remove doubt and ignore it and harness it. Because the second I feel the doubt or I feel the fear, I'm like, ooh, cool, there's something there, right? So I just go head first and take that imperfect action, right?
Yeah.
Some people might call it being distracted or doing too many things at once, but I see it as it all ties back to who I'm trying to become as a person and the reality I'm trying to create, right?
Yeah.
And so imperfect action really takes away the opportunity for anyone to doubt.
Yeah. That's so cool. I mean, I think you have an amazing mindset and your mindset has gotten you to where you are. And it does blow my mind that so many people doubt themselves, doubt their lives, doubt what they want. And they're really letting this little thing take them in places that they don't even want to go. Doubt is not real. It's just a lie that you're believing. It's just some thoughts that you're coming up with in your head. And I really love, you hitting on the fact that how you look at the world is how it actually is. There's that quote that says, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. Yep. And I think that's like a perfect example of your life and what you've done and what you've accomplished from a fellow Clevelander. How cool.
Go Cavs.
Go Cavs. Well, I really appreciate you sharing your story and sharing your mindset. I know a lot of people are going to get great value out of it. Do you want to share with us your next goal and then we can land a plane? What you're working on right now? So
we've really doubled and tripled down on scaling our real estate footprint. From owning more real estate and helping people, empowering people to build wealth through real estate and also to enjoy amazing places like Breckenridge through real estate. So honestly, just doubling and tripling down on what we've built so far is really the focus. So just execution and figuring out opportunities to grow together and really just staying focused.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. What is the best way for people to connect with you?
Honestly, like I said, I'm a pretty private person. I don't do too much social media, but I'm always happy to chat. I could share our rental management website, elevatedmtnrentals.com. You guys can reach out to me through there. My email's on there. You can shoot me an email. I'm always happy to chat really about anything business, entrepreneurship, real estate related.
Awesome.
Feel free to bounce ideas off me. It's my passion. So,
well, cool. Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing everything. And you and Erhard have a fun drive to the airport.
Yep. I'm looking forward to getting a little bit of that San Diego sunny weather.
Thank you again for sharing your story here at the Mindset Flex. And I hope that you guys felt as inspired as I did. And I'm going to leave you guys the same way that I always leave you. I hope you make the rest of your life the best of your life. I'll see you in the next episode.